Hello, and welcome to our first lesson in our Information Technology series on the Practical Assessment Task, or PAT. As you know, every IT learner has to create software for specific purpose as a part of their practical assessment task. We're going to take you through the process step by step. I'm sure this will look familiar to you. In the practical assessment task, you will deal with 3 different phases. You start with phase 1, research and analysis, and investigate the problem. Then, move on to identifying the requirements in order to propose a solution. In phase 2, we design the solution. And as you can see, there will be a lot to cover in all these lessons. Phase 3 is the implementation or creation of the program. You will cover this in a series of computer-based lessons. A mouthful, huh? Don't worry, we'll take it one step at a time. By the end of this lesson, you should be able to recognize the need for custom software, understand the steps involved in custom software development, outline the key aspects of the selected topic, explore and evaluate educational subgenres, and identify end-user expectations for this educational software genre. As we investigate and analyze the problem, we'll take a look at the need for custom software as opposed to off-the-shelf software, and we'll demonstrate the steps involved in developing custom software.
I know the PAT counts 25% of the overall mark, so I hope Mr. Kumano's here. Okay, got to go. Chat to you later.
Hello, Thabo.
Hi, Mr. Kumano.
Ready to get started on your practical assessment task?
To be honest, I'm not quite sure where to start.
The main purpose of the PAT is to teach you how to create software to solve a client's problem that existing software can't solve. This will come in handy if you work in IT one day, because the best jobs go to those who design the programs. Okay, so phase 1 is putting together a proposal document after some research and analysis. Before you can start anything, you have to decide what kind of software you want to create.
It has to be an educational program. But other than that, it's up to us to decide. That's the difficult part. How do I figure out what's needed?
You ask. That's why it's very important to do some preliminary research. Find out who is the client, the person or institution that needs software. Who is the user or end user that will use the software? Also, find out if there's existing software like freeware and shareware for the mass market. Or would custom software solve the problem that you're faced with? Let's take a closer look at the PAT. Who is your client?
In my case, the client is the school, or you, the teacher, right? And the end users are learners like me. But the school uses all kinds of software for different things. Where do I start?
Okay, we know your client uses software regularly, right? But it doesn't always meet their needs completely. You have to investigate this and find out exactly what doesn't work well. Then, write a program that will fill this gap and make the client's life easier.
Do you have to write a program from scratch?
Well, you do have a few options. You can either modify existing software, create new software, or create new software using existing software, add-ons and plugins.
Can I just modify any existing software?
If it comes close to solving your problem and is open source software, that's your best option.
What is open source?
Open source software is software operated under a license that permits users to study, change, improve, and sometimes even distribute the software. For example, Wikipedia. This is a free online encyclopedia that anyone can edit.
I'd rather create a new software.
Then you have some other options. New software can either interact with existing software, or you can create new software that uses files and objects from existing software or other resources like add-ons and plugins. Add-ons and plugins are types of software that add functionality to a program, but cannot be run independently.
How do we know which option to go for?
That depends on what your client needs. Imagine all the work I'll be doing this week. Which software would you advise me to use to keep record of the marks?
You don't need custom software for that. Just a spreadsheet like MS Excel.
And to store learner details like names, cell phone numbers, and dates of birth?
A database like MS Access.
What about creating text files for exams?
I'd use Notepad or a word processor like MS Word and save it as text instead of as a document.
All these needs can be met in existing software. But say I have to teach the terms and definitions for IT so that learners do better in multiple choice tests.
There's no software for that.
Exactly. You'd have to create custom software to help this client solve a problem existing software can't. That's what the PAT is about. You'd have to write a program by customizing pre-built building blocks of existing software to solve a particular problem.
I'm not sure I know what you mean by building blocks.
Building blocks could be images, sound, and other files created by other software, or text files created in Notepad or another program. Free add-ons and plugins like this media player. They could also be the components, objects, and methods available in the given language. For example, rapid application development frameworks, like Delphi Integrated Development Environment or Java Program Interfaces. Also, databases built in MS Access or any other database software. These are all examples of building blocks that can be used to create software to meet a client's needs.
I'm still confused as to how we know what kind of software to create.
Let's say I'm the client. How would you go about finding out what my needs are?
I'd ask, like you said, get an idea of what kind of software you use, and then I'd find out if there's anything I could create to make your life easier. Or maybe you know exactly what kind of software you want, but can't create it yourself.
Correct. Remember that it's very important to keep notes during the client interview. Also, you need to keep all other documents you use, such as questionnaires or surveys, as evidence that you've done the research. You'll need these to put together your proposal document later. Only once you have identified these key areas where problems exist can you create a detailed proposal that explains what you think the solution could be. This is called the proposal document. So, in phase 1 of the PAT, we meet the client to find out what the requirements are. Identify a problem, create a problem statement, investigate the problem fully, identify key areas that need attention, prepare documents that record and support your findings, produce a proposal document about what we think the solution could be.
Can you give me a practical example?
Let me think. As you know, learners use different devices to communicate. Cell phones, media players, the web, social networking.
But we're working on an assignment here.
Don't worry, I know you use these tools socially and to share information like homework tasks and so on. Now, say the principal calls you in and tells you they need a communication system that can be monitored and be used exclusively by learners and teachers.
Like a social network for the school. Gosh.
Yes, a social network seems to be the answer. But you're jumping to conclusions without doing a proper investigation. So let's go through all the steps you need to take before you can start developing the PAT. What kind of questions would you ask your client, in this case, the principal?
The client is the principal. The end users are the learners. And we know they use cell phones, the internet, social networking to communicate.
Let's call those their communications system. Now that we know what system the client has in place, we need to gather background information on this system and identify key areas to investigate. It's important to remember that the key areas for discussion are about the current system, such as the nature, limitations, and challenges. This is the background mentioned in the PAT document. Does this system, meaning random calling each other, emailing, texting, or surfing, have limitations in a school setup?
Quite a few limitations, actually. You can only use it before or after school or at break time, because chatting is not allowed. It wastes too much teaching time, and we can't keep record of a conversation to refer back to later or to share. And some of my friends don't have cell phones with media players, or they have old cell phones.
So it's fair to say the learners use a communication system that is flawed and could be improved. The more you find out about the current system, the easier it is to decide on the solution. So ask lots of questions. What other tools could you use to do your investigation?
I can do a survey to ask learners what they think, or use books and other documents.
Anything else?
Yeah, the internet. I can look at similar programs and use them as an example.
Remember to keep a record of everything. The questions you asked, the answers you got, the search words you used, URLs or addresses of the websites you visited, and printouts of the web pages you used. This will form a part of your supporting documents and should show what you intended to investigate and which sources you've used. Once you've identified and investigated your client's problem, you can explore and evaluate possible solutions and decide which educational subgenre you're going to use to correct it.
Educational subgenres.
The different types of educational programs or software we get. Can you think of any?
Well, you get programs that simulate science experiments, or programs that show a video clip and then do a question-answer thing.
Yes, there are different types of educational programs. The most popular is drill and practice. When you keep presenting and working with the same information, like when you learn your times tables in primary school.
6 times 6 is 36, 7 times 7 is 49, 8 times 8 is...
This is called drill and practice. You also get software that test. Have you heard of Selingua?
Yeah, they have cool crosswords.
Selingua is free software that teaches different languages. Anyone can download and play it. It's a great example of how software can be applied to educate in a fun way. You can choose between different languages. Here, I've indicated that I'm English and I'm learning French. There are also various games I can choose from. Can you tell me what the software does? Does it teach, drill, or test?
Selingua's crosswords definitely test.
Right. You have to translate the clue into the language you're learning. In this case, you have to translate the English clue to French. And if the program showed you an image like this, where you are asked to click on each of the numbered labels to find out more, would this be teach, drill, or test?
That would definitely be teaching.
Correct. Can you give me an example of drilling?
Well, when you do timetables over and over and over again.
You see, drilling is when you're not learning anything new. You're simply repeating what you already know to make sure you don't forget it. It's important to decide what kind of program you're going to write. Teach, drill, or test. If you try to cover more than one educational genre, the program will become too complicated.
Can we get to programming already?
Almost. We first have to identify the end-user expectations for a particular software genre. To do that, you must identify your target users. You need to know their age, grade, sex, and how computer literate they are. Say you've been asked to develop a program to test subtraction for grade 2 learners. What can you tell me about your target user?
They're around 7, 8 years old, know a bit about computers, but not much. You have to remember, you're dealing with boys and girls. They'll know the basics of maths, but really basic. So you can't overload them with too much info. So a game would probably be great. Something simple like getting 20 apples into a bowl kind of thing.
Anything else you'd need to think of? My niece is that age and she loses interest if you don't encourage her all the way.
So she'd probably like to see her score.
Yeah.
And big ticks next to what she got right, or sounds that encourage her. And some encouraging messages like, well done, you're a star, or more stars being added to the side of the screen.
See, if you make sure you know your target user, the solution is obvious. This takes care of the first 2 parts of your proposal, the problem statement and the investigation. A problem statement should always state what the client needs, what software she uses, why this software doesn't answer her needs. Your investigation should look at how the current system works. Identify and explain key areas to investigate and include fact-finding documents. You have now completed your research and analysis and are ready to identify the requirements of your PAT, but we'll leave that for next time. Here's your task for this lesson. Thabo has gone to see the IT teacher to find out if she has any software needs. The teacher explains that her new learners are not getting good marks in their IT terminology tests. She wants to provide a program that can help them find all the terms in one place and learn them easily. 1. Suggest a suitable problem statement. 2. Write down at least 2 questions for each of the areas that Thabo must investigate to get to the nature of the problem. Also, list the current efforts to solve the problem, but without the use of software. List the limitations and challenges in the current solution. The practical assessment task seems daunting at first, but if you make sure you complete each phase thoroughly, everything will fall into place. That's it for today. See you soon.